You have so much data in your hands. Most of you have a watch, you have a ring. You may not have a glucose monitor, you may not be monitoring your hormones consistently, but these are all options available to us. And so when you're in a situation and you're told there's nothing wrong and that they don't know what's wrong with you, if you haven't been doing at home testing every day, then there's no way that's true. Now, it might be true that you're fine, but there's no way that it's true that they know for sure there's nothing wrong with you.
Welcome to the Advanced Women's Health Podcast, where we empower women with the latest insights and advice on holistic health. From cutting-edge medical research to practical wellness tips, our mission is to help you thrive at every stage of life. Join us as we explore topics ranging from hormonal balance and reproductive health to nutrition and mental well-being. Whether you're seeking solutions for a specific health concern or simply want to enhance your overall wellness, you're in the right place. Let's embark on this journey to better health together. This is the Advanced Women's Health Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Advanced Women's Health Podcast. I am so excited to dive in today to talk a little bit more about a subject I'm pretty obsessed with, which is these different monitoring tools, right? Some people call them biohacking. You can call them a lot of different things, but really there are three big categories of these monitoring devices that I personally use, that I recommend to patients pretty much every day, and that I think are game changer in terms of women's health. So for today's episode, I'm not going to talk about too many brands. The reason being is because there are timeless principles to this, and I think technology is often fleeting. So meaning heart rate variability will always be critical, but the best way to measure heart rate variability will change. Measuring your glucose, as we'll talk about, is a critical component of health, but how you do that is probably going to change over time. And so where things are critical that I talk about a brand, I always will. So for example, Garmin devices, watches, etc., they bought a technology or the rights to use a technology called FirstBeat. FirstBeat is a heart rate variability, so a stress indicator, and we'll talk about that, but it is a specific one that they use in the research. And so the way heart rate variability is measured and monitored with Garmin's is something that I feel is very reproducible and very consistent. So that's one piece. The other piece that is really important is that there are so many different norms, reference ranges, things like that that are touted out in the world. Now, whenever you are adopting a new technology, whenever you're using a new system, software, etc., there's always going to be a reference range established for norms for all these different things. So, what is that reference range? That reference range is defined by what is like the high end of normal, what is the low end of normal, and then what's pathological. So, you need to understand the population used. If you are looking at heart rate variability metrics from a company or glucose metrics from a company, but it's only been validated on unwell men, then as a well woman, we're probably going to need different things. So there's actually a continuous glucose monitor or CGM in the US right now that has been launched specifically for not for type 2 diabetics, not for people who are on insulin, but specifically for healthy people. And that will probably eventually come to Canada. And so that has been tested on a narrower range, meaning if you are looking at diabetes, you're really concerned that it is going to catch very high numbers and their numbers tend to sit higher, meaning it's going to be validated at a higher number. And you're going to need to ensure that if it drops really quickly, we catch that. So it has to be validated in that change. And so, what we are looking at as healthcare providers is saying, is the technology this patient's using has been validated on enough people that look like my people? And if that's the case, then we can use that to be true. This is the same about lab reference ranges. We talk about lab reference ranges all the time. Naturopaths are known for this. We grade functional ranges, meaning we have a narrower range of health. Most reference ranges are defined by disease, and then we have a narrow range defined by health. The same is true when you're looking at these biohacking measures. The question becomes, what do we do with it? Why do we do it? What's important? So I work personally in my personal practice. So, advanced women's health, we see a whole scope of people, and they are all, again, very different with the practitioners they're working with, etc. My practice, I tend to see these, like, I see a lot of entrepreneurs, I see a lot of other doctors, I see a lot of women in leadership positions. And with that, there are so many similarities in the challenges they face. Now, you're in a leadership position if you're leading your home. You're in a leadership position if you're leading a classroom. Like, don't get in your head about this. But what tends to be really consistent is that the ability to self assess stress, the ability to self assess sleep, the ability to self assess some of these really key factors changes. And so we tend to be very externally focused. And so the feedback that we have within ourselves is not as good as it once. And there's a lot of different variables, there's a lot of different factors, but that's where having an external source of feedback, like a ring, like continuous glucose monitor, are all very important. So, with many, if not most, of my high performers, I measure heart rate variability. So, we'll talk more in detail, but I'm measuring heart rate variability. I'm measuring recovery heart rate at night, sleep. These are all like key pieces, body temperature, because most of these measure body temperature. I am also looking at step count, of course, with the Advanced Women's Health Challenge coming up at the time of this recording. We love a good step count. So I am monitoring consistent daily movement. And then we're comparing that to glucose. So if you move your body, does your glucose get better? If you do HIIT training, does your glucose get better or worse? Right? You ask all of these questions. Then you look and you say, okay, if I go for a walk, is it better or worse? If I'm stressed and sitting in meetings, is my glucose better or worse? One of the topics we're going to do coming up is looking at weight loss resistance from burnout, right? You're eating the right things, you're doing all of these things right. Even something that we do really frequently is the fasting mimicking diet. So, Prolon is a company that offers it, but you can also do a food based form. And we have patients that do a fast for 5 days and do not lose any weight. That tells you all you need to know about their nervous system and their stress responses, all of those types of things. But it's a very possible scenario. And so we can use a continuous glucose monitor to tell us why. I also have a lot of people coming in saying, I do not feel as resilient. My hormones are not great. The week before my period, I am not myself. Like, they are experiencing these really significant hormonal symptoms. And so, with that, I could send them to a lab and get their blood drawn. And we can look at one data point in time. And that one data point can give us the opportunity to, again, feed forward and make some diagnostics. Yes. But when we're looking at functional health, it's really important to look consistently over time, right? So it's really important that you are looking and you're saying, okay, what is happening every other day? Sometimes every day, the week before your period. Are your hormones high? Are they low? Are they fluctuating really dramatically, which is something we see? So all of these tests, heart rate variability, which is stress, recovery rate at night, sleep, right? And the types of sleep we're getting, we can measure our glucose at home, we can measure our hormones at home. These are all things that you can measure all day, every day, that are going to give you such an accurate representation, not of what's happening one day at the lab or 3 days at the lab, but what's happening on a day to day basis, which is absolutely critical to your success and overall health. So, on my ring, you would also get this on a watch. Of course, we have steps. We want to get enough movement. So, over 10,000 steps is ideal. Even if you're getting in that 8 to 10 range, that is still a very good place to be. So, we're looking at that. Okay. Then we're looking at heart rate variability. So I've talked about this a lot, but how I describe it is when your body is at rest, your heart should be like boom, 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 right? It should be all over the place, exactly like that. Actually, no, I'm joking. But it's like there's a lot of variability between the beats. When you're stressed or running or something, your heart's no, 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 no. Like it's just the same. The variability between the beats is very small. And that tells us about the sympathetic response, so the stress response. The parasympathetic response is when heart rate variability is higher. So we would like to see someone's heart rate variability. We would like to see that in an ideal world over 80. When we're getting in the 30s, 40s, 20s, especially, heart rate variability is telling us that person is quite stressed. Now, if you use a technology like Garmin or some other devices, they give you a stress score, which is not the same as heart rate variability. So if you're looking at pure heart rate variability, higher is better. Higher is less stressed. When the first beat technology, it takes heart rate variability and it takes other metrics as well. And it just converts that into a stress score. So in that situation, you want your stress score to be in like the 20s, not the 50s. And so that is how we're looking at it. And you can see that over time, right? You see, oh, I was in a stressful meeting. Oh, okay, that was not great, right? Your heart rate variability either dropped or your stress score went. You also look at night. So, for example, it's probably more than you guys need to know about me, but podcast, we're hanging out. Why not?
Today's episode is brought to you by none other than Advanced Women's Health. If you are interested in diving in deeper to your health, if you are finally ready to feel like yourself, and you are finally over hearing everything's normal, everything's fine, and you want a deeper dive into your healthcare, then we are here to help you. We are currently helping patients in British Columbia and Ontario, Canada. But don't worry, if you're in another province, still reach out, get added to the waitlist as we expand coast to coast. We cannot wait to work with you. Check out the show notes for more information on how to get started.
A few years ago, when I used to consume alcohol, so like a glass of wine, something like that, my heart rate variability was better, which is very uncommon. For most people, they don't sleep very well for a number of reasons if they drink alcohol, but their heart rate variability will plummet. And it was a joke in the clinic because a couple of the girls had very poor heart rate. Their body alerted them to like severe stress when they drank any alcohol at all. And so recently, as my resilience has changed with some recent stressors and incidents, I find that if I drink alcohol, my heart rate variability is not as good. And I'm like, right. So now, of course, you work to recover your heart rate variability, you work to rebuild resilience, you work at all of these components. But heart rate variability can tell you physiological stressors like drinking alcohol, right? Blood sugar dysregulation is another one. Even food sensitivities for some people, their heart rate variability will drop quite significantly and their heart rate goes up if they eat foods that they don't tolerate. And that's a stressor to the system. So that's heart rate variability. We want to see it showing that at the very least, you're recovering at night. At the best, you're not experiencing stress significantly in excess throughout the course of the day. Then we look at sleep metrics. There's a lot we know, and then there's a lot of question marks. So the things we know is that we know it is absolutely critical that people are getting at least 6 to 8 hours of sleep a night. I like to say 8, but for most people, they're in that range of 6 to 8. So of that, there's different percentages that are dedicated to REM, non-REM, dedicated to deep sleep, etc. The tricky thing is, I find for the vast majority of my patients, what needs to happen is that they need to get at least an hour and a half, if not 2 hours of deep sleep in the first half of their sleep cycle. And they need their heart rate because it's also measured their resting heart rate, their lowest heart rate of the evening or the night, to happen before that period of time. If you can get your resting heart rate to drop before midnight, ideally before 11 o'clock, that means that you have the ability to get into a recovery sleep in a better way. But if you're experiencing a lot of anxiety, if you're stressed before bed, if your blood sugar is dysregulated, if you're inflamed, if you're drinking alcohol, depending on who you are, all of these things are factors that can mean you're lying in bed asleep, but your recovery heart rate is not where it should be, is one potential option. Or two, you're just not actually getting enough deep sleep and enough REM sleep. So sleep is a critical thing to measure. Then we talked about heart rate. So we want someone's heart rate and their resting heart rate to drop not only before midnight, but also to be able to recover. For most people, it's like high 60s, low 70s to be in that range and to get that recovery. Some people who are very athletic drop into the high 50s. So it's going to be dependent on the person. But if your heart rate is still sitting at like 80 plus at night, you're likely not recovering. We can get into a lot more detail on all of those aspects, but I wanted today to be high level. Like, why would you track some of these metrics? Then, when we get into temperature and hormones go hand in hand. So I use an at-home urinary hormone test kit. Again, there are a lot of them that are coming to market right now. There's really only one main one, but there's a lot that are coming to market. And so you pee in a cup first thing in the morning, you dip your stick for 20 seconds, you put it in the reader, and then it gives you a hormone reading. So this is something I've been investigating for a while. We all probably have heard of the urinary hormone test that you do like a one off in a lab, but this test is something that you can do at home. It's much more cost effective. It gives you real time patterns and data. And when I recently did it, I was surprised to see that my hormones were lower, much lower than I expected. I think oftentimes we associate higher hormones with aging and then low hormones with menopause. But hormones are very associated with oxidative stress, with the health of the ovaries. As I've mentioned in previous episodes, we're seeing a lot of damage to the mitochondria and damage to the ovaries, which is where hormones are made. And so, if that's happening post viral, then there are going to be implications of that that need to be understood and investigated. So, testing my hormones at home and then testing different supplements, interventions, lifestyle methodologies is something that's very helpful and can be very empowering because you can understand where you're at and where you need support and where you need to be supplemented. And it's especially powerful when you compare what you're eliminating in your urine to what's circulating. Because some people, their liver is not eliminating their hormones. So it looks lower than it should be in the urine and it looks higher than it should be in the blood. And so some of the big patterns I see here: rapid fluctuations in estradiol with fatigue, with brain fog, with getting headaches before periods, histamine symptoms, so feeling allergies, feeling again like that nausea, sometimes that fogginess can come up, getting actual allergies, sneezing, your pre-period flu. We also see really rapid pre-period mood changes when there's rapid fluctuations in estradiol. And so you can't ever see that if you're going to the lab, right? You have to test that consistently over time to be able to see what's happening. So that's a pattern we see quite a bit. I also see quite a bit of dysfunction within the progesterone production. So, progesterone is made from the corpus luteum. So, after you ovulate, you make progesterone. And progesterone is very important for a lot of different things. So, it's important for sleep, it's important for mood, it is important for proper lining function, meaning you don't have super heavy periods, you don't have really painful periods. It's important for gestation and getting pregnant. So, we're seeing a few different things. One, a really delayed rise. So, you get progesterone, but not until too late. That again can result in someone struggling to get pregnant, implantation. We're also seeing on the other side of that that people have a really high progesterone peak and then boom, it plummets. So for a whole week before their period, they mainly have estrogen fluctuations, which contributes to a lot of PMS and a lot of symptoms related to mood, related to sleep, etc. And then sometimes people just have low levels. It's just like right? They're not getting a peak. Well, that is your brain's not telling your ovaries to make it. That's your ovaries can't respond. There's damage to the mitochondria. There's egg quality issues. There's corpus luteum or blood flow issues. All of these are possible reasons why that can happen. But again, that has to be looked at consistently. Because even if I send a patient 7 days after they ovulate to the lab, when I say, okay, let's test your hormones, then they're in a situation where if it's a little bit low, I'm like, oh, it could have been high tomorrow. It could have been high yesterday. It's hard to know. So this test allows us to see consistently over time what is happening. So incredibly valuable if you're like, am I PMSing? Am I perimenopausal? Like what's going on? Which a lot of my patients are asking that question these days, which gives us the opportunity to investigate that. Then we look at the continuous glucose monitor. I'm tapping my arm because that's where it goes. You can also put it in your abdomen, actually. But your continuous glucose monitor is going to look at your glucose 24 hours a day. What's happening when you have cravings, what's happening when you eat, what's happening when you fast, what's happening when you exercise, what's happening when you sleep. And it can be very helpful because, especially for people who wake up in the middle of the night and we've dealt with their stress responses and we're working on the nervous system, sometimes those fluctuations are really just big representations of glucose dysregulation. It's also a really great feedback mechanism for people who are trying to lose weight and they can't understand why they're not, because maybe their glucose is going up in a meeting. Maybe it's going up with their coffee, even if it's black. Maybe it's going up with the type of exercise. And when your glucose goes up, insulin will come up to follow it. Now, if there's food or no food, glucose signals for insulin to do its job, to come and shunt that glucose away. And if you're sitting in a meeting, chances are it's going to shunt some of that into your fat cells. And so we can end up with this significant challenge. We also know that people who have liver dysfunction, for a variety of reasons, when they're experiencing that liver dysfunction, what can happen is we can be in this situation where your liver is not turning off glucose production. So your liver makes glucose and you can eat glucose, right? But when your liver is making that glucose can still be stored away. So your liver is inflamed, there's fat in it, you have challenges with your gut microbiome, etc. Your liver then's making glucose. You're not eating, it's making glucose. And that glucose is then pushed away into the fat cells or the muscles, but the fat cells is one of them. So if you are wearing a continuous glucose monitor and we see that your glucose is never high, but it's never low, then that's telling us what is happening as well. So you can get hundreds of patterns out of CGMs, but those are key ones that we look for. And we also look at, are you snacking throughout the day? Sometimes we just habitually eat. There's no shame in that, but we're just habitually eating more often than we think we are, even if we're tracking and not eating very many calories. And so these are other things that we can pick. And so, as you can imagine, if I can see your hormones, see the health of the hormone production, get an understanding of what's going on there, then, right, follow that through and say, okay, now I can see your glucose. And if you have cravings, I can see the connection between the two of them, right? I can see what's happening. This gives me an estimate of nervous system, gives me an estimate of liver function. And then I look and I say, now I see your nervous system, I see your sleep. That is a wildly powerful combination. It is the favorite program that I run with my patients because we run insulin, we run inflammation, we run liver, we run whatever data we can at the lab, and then everything else you get to take home and you get to measure and you get to see the impact of supplements and see the impact of diet. And it keeps you really motivated and driving forward, which is also something that I love. So that is really the big thing I wanted you to take away today is that you have so much data in your hands. Most of you have a watch, you have a ring. You may not have a glucose monitor, you may not be monitoring your hormones consistently, but these are all options available to us. And so when you're in a situation when you're told there's nothing wrong and that they don't know what's wrong with you, if you haven't been doing at home testing every day, then there's no way that's true. Now, it might be true that you're fine, but there's no way that it's true that they know for sure there's nothing wrong with you. If you go for a complete blood count, iron, B12, just your TSH communication between your brain and your thyroid, they go for a cholesterol panel and get a ton of data from that. I love that. If you're exhausted and you're bloated and you're gaining weight and you feel like your resilience is declining and you are PMSing and hormonal and your cycles are heavy and then short and you do not feel like yourself, that list of blood testing I just told you is not telling you anything except deficiency states. Do you have enough iron? Which you might not, right? But these are all really key components that we need to understand as women. We deserve this information. We can get this information at home. And every single provider you work with, I deeply believe, means the absolute very best. They mean like they want to help. That's why we get into this profession. They want to help. And for some people, the help that they are trained to and want to provide is absolutely exactly what you need. And for other situations, your blood work might look okay, but functional testing is telling us today you're not okay, you're not great, and in 5 or 10 years, you could have a disease. And this is what people want. This is what people come to me for. This is what they want, right? They want this power. They want this information. They want these tools in their hands. And so I just wanted to record a little episode today outlining for you that if you want to get this type of information about your bodies and you want to connect the dots in a new way, you absolutely can. All the power is there for you. And so feel free. Again, if you want, the technology is going to update consistently. I am more than happy to tell you what I am using. You can message me, Dr. Sarah underscore ND on Instagram. I run that profile. I'm happy to answer your questions. I'm happy to give you the keys to the castle because it is so important that we have them. And the programs that I run where people have all this information, it's so empowering. Like it's night and day. You see such a huge difference. And I am always so excited to be a part of that journey with people and help them see those things. So there's so many more metrics you can monitor. There's so many more things we could outline, but those are the basics that can help you to recover and change the trajectory of your health this summer and get the information you need. So I hope that was helpful. I hope you enjoyed. I hope to chat with you on the back end. So if you're liking this podcast, please leave us a rating, review, send it to a friend, track some data. If you want to join the Advanced Women's Health Challenge, then watch out on our Instagram for more information. And if you want to hear more from me, I also, for the summer of 2025, I'm doing daily educational and inspirational messages. And so you are able to find all that information in my link in bio at Dr. Sarah underscore ND on Instagram. So have a beautiful day, and I will talk to you soon.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope that you had as much fun as we did. And if you loved today's episode, share it with a friend and leave us a review. That is how we spread this message, and that is how we are going to revolutionize healthcare in Canada for women. Have a beautiful day and be well.